So another year has finally rolled around and we're going to be getting to see Dana White's Contender Series 2025, and I'm going to be predicting them on the We Want Picks channel for another year. I do believe I've been predicting Dana White's Contender Series on the channel since 2022. I believe it's the first year that I have done it, and I believe I had a fantastic 2022 year. I had a bad 2023 year, and I had a pretty good 2024 year, and of course it does also spark the greatest rivalry in MMA betting, me versus Yanni the Greek. I did take him down last year, of course. I don't think that we've really had that much competitiveness, but he did actually have a pretty solid year in 2023. I will give him that credit, so hopefully we can take him on in 2025. If you are unfamiliar with me and the Contender Series, I am Artem. I do have my own channel, Artem MMA, and I also do predict a lot of regional fights and the PFL and Bellator fights, if they still do those, on the We Want Picks channel, as well as my own channel as well. And I write articles for the We Want Picks website. I'm sure Angelo has probably told you all about them, but I do have articles every single week as well coming out for Dana White's Contender Series 2. So if you did want to check those out, of course, you can sign up to the We Want Picks website, and you can use my code ARTEM for a 10% discount on your first membership. I'm telling you guys, this is a good season. I have been looking into this quite a bit. I'm quite a few weeks into my tape study now, and this is going to be one of the better Contender Series seasons we have ever seen, and I just cannot really wait to see the fights, and then also the fighters that are going to come out of this and see how they can fare in the UFC. So the first fight of the card and the first fight of the season is going to be between Murtaza Talha and Baysangur Susurkaev at 185 pounds, and I'm telling you guys, this is a good fight, and I am actually very, very excited about Baysangur Susurkaev. I am relatively prepared to lead a hype train. However, I will admit that he could have some potential trouble with Murtaza Talha in this matchup. Baysangur Susurkaev is a very, very talented guy for only 24 years old in the middleweight division. This guy has a very low volume yet familiar technical kickboxing style. He actually does relatively greatly remind me of Israel Adesanya in some moments, because he will stand there, he will jab, he will leg kick, but he will also emote a lot as well. He'll point to the ground, he'll wave at his opponents, he'll do all sorts of stuff, and he is very, very fun to watch. But another thing that's quite interesting about him is he actually does have pretty solid wrestling as well. This is mostly seen, in my opinion, in the Shane Chabnowski fight, but he doesn't really attempt takedowns. He only really reverses takedown attempts by his opponents, but once he can do that, his takedown defense in general is very good, but sometimes if he gets the opportunity, he will reverse the takedown attempt and get his own top control, which is also very, very good. Baysangur Susurkaev, once again, his takedown defense is fantastic. I believe this opponent here, Kuchikidze, was trying to take him down maybe 6 times in the first round. It was kind of nuts. He was just spamming takedown attempts, and Baysangur Susurkaev defended, I believe, all of them except for a couple, and that takedown defense held up. And it's going to need to, because he is going to take on Murtaza Talha. And I know that Murtaza Talha looked absolutely terrible on the Contender Series against Rodolfo Bellato a couple of years ago, after I gassed him up as well, by the way. But apparently he'd like sprained his ACL like only a few months before that performance, and it's kind of since then we've never really seen him. He actually fought 205 pounds in the past as well. He of course fought a good friend of the channel, Mikhail Saziniani, who fought in the Contender Series last year at 205 pounds. Since then he's fought once, and it was against a guy that was 0-4. You can't learn much from that. However, Murtaza Talha, though, he does have pretty good boxing. Now, I actually did do a lot of revisionist on this, because I do remember really, really hyping up Talha against Bellato, and then I actually looked back at the tape of Talha again, of course, and I was kind of thinking to myself, oh, like, Talha is not as good as I thought he was. Like, he was kind of struggling in moments to get takedowns on Mikhail Saziniani, who was really only a pure striker, and even then, like, aside from that, he did, like, look really good against Kirill Kamitsky, but just in general, he is very undersized for 205 pounds. I'm interested to see how he's going to look at this weight class, but I think his biggest danger in this matchup isn't actually going to be his wrestling. I think it's going to be his boxing, because Baysangur Susurkaev, if I was to kind of say something negative about him, it is that he is very low volume on the feet. He's not really throwing much out there. He very much will just kind of leg kick from range. He definitely will kind of throw a couple shots out there at moments. When he does land, it is pretty powerful, but Murtaza Talha typically does fight with a very aggressive, sort of close range, close quarters boxing, dirty boxing even in the clinch sometimes sort of style. He is going to be dangerous in round 1. He does have a lot of early finishes as well throughout his career, so that would be interesting to kind of see, where we, of course, have actually seen Susurkaev go 3 rounds recently. I am picking Baysangur Susurkaev to win this matchup. I'm picking him to win this fight by decision, but maybe he could get a late finish as well. I'm very, very high on Baysangur Susurkaev. He is only taking this fight on 1 week's notice, but I do believe if he doesn't make any silly mistakes, he should be able to beat Murtaza Talha. And if he can get past Talha, who is a test on 1 week's notice, I think that Baysangur Susurkaev can find a lot of success in the UFC. I do believe that this is a guy to really keep your eye out for if he can get past Talha. So Talha is not the pick. Susurkaev is the pick by decision or maybe late finish with not a lot of confidence, given the fact that he has taken this fight on 1 week's notice. And speaking of short notice opportunities, Christopher Ewert, of course, was given a short notice opportunity in the UFC. He was actually going to fight on a pretty major card against Jackson McVeigh, but he failed to make weight in that fight. Apparently, he was well overweight. When he accepted the fight, he tried to cut the weight. He just couldn't quite do it. Alvin Hines, his teammate, actually stayed up all night trying to help him cut the weight as well. So shout out to Alvin Hines, because he went out there against Jonata Deniz as a big underdog and had a pretty good performance himself. But for Ewert, he missed weight. I think it was like by 8 pounds or something crazy. It was a pretty big miss, and they cancelled the fight, obviously. So he's actually been given the Contender Series opportunity again after being originally pulled from this matchup. And I do kind of understand why the UFC does like this one, as the styles are quite different. Yuri Panferov is definitely more of a wrestler. His striking, in my opinion, is a pretty big weakness, especially that striking defense. And Christopher Ewert mostly is a boxer, and he mostly is kind of like Talha, actually, a very kind of close-ranged boxer, as he throws a lot of hooks out there. And he will kind of in moments have his chin up in the air and just kind of be swinging those hooks, but he's very, very good in the pocket. And he had a very, very good performance against Reese Watkins, who I do believe if Reese Watkins won this fight, he would be the one on the Contender Series, because he is a relatively hyped up prospect as well, and also quite closely affiliated with Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis. Yuri Panferov, of course, is a guy trained by Matt Sierra Longo, and he had his opportunity on the Contender Series against Torres Finney a couple of years ago. And I revisited that fight once again. Of course I did. But in my head, I always kind of remembered that fight as Yuri Panferov giving up a pretty good performance. And that's why Torres Finney didn't get the contract. But in hindsight, I actually didn't think that Panferov looked that good at all in this fight. You know, of course, Finney was taking him down and stuff like that. But even Finney was finding some striking success on the feet. Not a lot, but some striking success. And I just think that Panferov, he hasn't really improved his striking all that much. I mean, he has been able to find a lot of dominant positions, a lot of full guard, full mount positions is what I'm looking for, and getting those ground and pound TKOs. But I just haven't really seen Christopher Ewert struggle against a wrestler yet. This is probably the best wrestler he has ever fought, but I do think that the difference on the feet is so big that Christopher Ewert is the better striker, and I think that Ewert is going to land on Panferov because his chin is very much in the air and ready to get hit. And now we have a fight which I struggled to tape originally, Jimmy Drago versus Ty Miller. And the reason why is because Jimmy Drago, I just couldn't really find his fights, but I did get sent a lot of them after I did my early predictions video, so thank you guys for sourcing those fights for me. And it's actually quite an interesting clash of styles in this matchup. I do believe Ty Miller is a -200 favorite. I think he actually might be the largest favorite on this card. Ilian Bouafia, sorry, is -260, but Ty Miller is -200, so a relatively big favorite. And I do think that I understand why, because Ty Miller has a very, very fun to watch style. Like, this is a very odd comparison, I would say, but he does kind of remind me as if Carlos Prates was a boxer, where he is 6'2", he's a tall guy for the weight class, and he wants to fight from range. He keeps his hands somewhat low in moments, and he just throws a lot of straight shots from range. You know, Prates, known for that jab, known for that step in straight left. Ty Miller kind of does the same thing, except he throws a lot of 1-2s, and he throws a lot of straight punches from range, and he uses that range very, very well. He is, of course, a pretty tall guy, which I've said 3 times now, but just want to emphasize that, I guess. And another thing as well about Ty Miller is I don't think that his defense, his wrestling defense itself is fantastic, but his get-up game is very, very good. In his fights that did go the distance, I did see him get taken down. And that is not really the best thing that you want to see. However, Nearly every single time he was able to get up very, very quickly. The fight against Eric Nolan, this is a fight that he won based on damage for sure. But Eric Nolan did find a lot of wrestling success against him in the sort of sense that he got the takedown. But Ty Miller would use the cage and just get back up. And even towards the end of the fight, especially the third round when they were both tired, maybe Miller would get taken down in the middle of the cage. But it wouldn't matter. Miller would be able to scramble up and out of it and do more damage on the feet in that sort of area. The takedown defense, I think overall with time has improved, but it is something that is worth noting that Ty Miller, his initial takedown defense hasn't looked fantastic yet. Jimmy Drago, I wouldn't really say is much of a wrestler, though. I would say that he's got a pretty awkward sort of striking style. Very much wants to be the guy that is pressuring forward, and when he does, he throws a lot more kicks to the body than Miller will. Miller does throw kicks, but it's not all that much. He really is a boxer. Whereas I would say Drago probably has more of that sort of traditional MMA kickboxing style. The thing about Drago as well is he will mix in some wrestling too. A lot of his highlights do kind of consist on some pretty big takedowns up against the cage and finding some finishing positions from there. The level of competition for Drago as well, I would say, is probably better overall than Ty Miller. He has fought some pretty top guys for this promotion here, Ring of Combat. I was sent links from TikTok. I was sent links from YouTube. I'm surprised I couldn't find the YouTube ones. That was a bit embarrassing. But for the most part, Jimmy Drago is a pretty aggressive guy. He wants to come forward. He wants to throw some kicks. And he wants to mix in some wrestling. That's where it does get interesting for me in this matchup, is because just initially Ty Miller's takedown defense hasn't looked fantastic. But I do think that it is going to be good enough to keep the fight on the feet. And as long as the fight is on the feet, I do think that Ty Miller is the better striker out of the two. And I do believe that he's very accurate with those boxing combinations, with those straight shots. So I'm going to go with Ty Miller to win a decision here. And as you can see, the Tapology predictors are very, very closely aligned in this one here, despite Ty Miller being a minus 200 favorite. This fight is the best fight on the card, in my opinion. This is a very high-level fight. This is a fight between two champions of their own respected MMA organizations. Radley de Silva is the champion of the BFL, the Battlefield Fight League. You can watch this on the UFC Fight Pass. This is a fantastic promotion, in my opinion, out of Canada. The World War cards are awesome. The Night of Champions card was awesome. They had 5 title fights on that card. It was insane. And George Mangos is, of course, the champion of Hex Fight Series over in Australia. And he is recently coming off 2 very impressive performances, as well as a big win over Justin Van Heerden, which I will get to in a moment. Talk about Radley de Silva. Very interesting striking style, because when I say I haven't seen anyone throw more spinning wheel kicks in my time looking into fights, that would be a truthful comment. This guy throws spinning wheel kicks as if it's a roundhouse. You know, like he come out there, I think it was against Maxime Sosi, and within the first 15 seconds, he'd thrown a spinning wheel kick. And then he'd thrown another one within maybe the first 90 seconds of the fight. He's just throwing wheel kicks all the time. And he even, of course, got a massive highlight reel. One of the best knockouts of the year, in my opinion, if he was able to walk it off against Drake Randall. Big spinning wheel kick KO to the head in round 2 in that matchup. But of course, he is, I would say, in my opinion, though, not known for his striking. He's known for his grappling. And he's very good at it. He's a very good wrestler. He's pretty big for the weight class. I would actually say that he's going to have a size advantage in this fight, which I do think does matter when it does come down to grappling sequences. And when you do watch his fights, he wants to get the takedown, and he wants to get the control, and then he wants to get the rear naked choke. He's been finding a lot of success in doing so. This win over Maxime Sosi was a fight which he probably had like 15 minutes of control time over 5 rounds. And that's another thing that I want to mention as well. I like to see this. I like to see the fact that he's gone deep into rounds 2, round 3. I know that his cardio is going to be good in a 3-round fight, which I think that there's a pretty good chance that this fight does go the distance. I know that George Mangos coming off some massive, massive wins. Of course, you can watch these fights on George Mangos' own YouTube channel, actually, which is quite cool. He's got some vlogs up there, so shout out to him. Shout out to his YouTube channel. Ethan Thomas, he knocked him out in 34 seconds. Not really too much to say. This Shuichi Tomita matchup, brutal head kick KO. Shuichi Tomita actually leaned into it, which made it even worse. So he's actually coming off some very quick, fast KO wins. But I would once again say that George Mangos probably isn't necessarily known for his striking. I would say it's probably the grappling that really got him into the show. And this is a very big win that he got over Justin Van Heerden, because I do remember at the time, this was quite a hyped matchup, because he had accepted this fight on very, very short notice, and at the time, of course, it was a massive step up in competition. Justin Van Heerden has been knocking on the UFC's door for years now, so to get a big win over him is quite important, and to get a big win against him, and what in my opinion was a bit of a comeback victory, even though I think a lot of people would say it was probably 1-1 going into the third. There is an argument that Van Heerden was up 2-0, but there was a lot of grappling in this one. Van Heerden was getting a lot of control time in the clinch. And in the clinch, Mangos sets up this flying triangle. Very, very cool highlight for him at the very end of round 3 of a 5-round fight. Mangos is a good grappler. I do think, in my opinion, he is going to be smaller than Radley de Silva in this fight, despite them both being 5'10". But on the feet, I do have to favor Mangos. I think that it's kind of in general, Mangos has like more technical boxing. Radley de Silva's striking is quite wild. Like although he does throw very, very effective strikes, I don't think that he's quite compact and quite sort of as technical as Mangos is. And when it comes to the grappling, I think that what we have seen from George Mangos, especially in the Van Heerden matchup, which I think is important when you look at this one, is just the fact that we can see that Mangos can sort of get himself out of tough positions if Radley de Silva is going to do that in the grappling. So for that reason, I am picking George Mangos to win this one. I think this is a close fight. I think a lot of people really, really love George Mangos, and I think that that is very valid. He is only 21 years old, one of the best prospects in MMA in general, in my opinion, but this is a tough test. Radley de Silva is a legitimate talent. He's a very, very good fighter, a champion of a very good organization as well. I do love Battlefield Fight League, but I am going to be picking George Mangos to win a close one here. This is a low confidence pick for me again. George Mangos to win a decision, damage-based decision over Radley de Silva, -175 for Mangos. And now we can move up to the main event. Ilian Bouafia taking on Neemias Santana, and I am quite confident in Bouafia's skill set in this one here. Ilian Bouafia is 6'5". He's a French kickboxer, and he looks promising. That is actually the first thing that I said, I believe, when I messaged one of my collaborators in the Contender Series, because it is a beautiful, beautiful world of collaboration when it comes down to the Contender Series. I'm not really just doing all of this tape study myself. I'm doing the tape study. I'm talking about it with reporters. I'm talking about it with other YouTube channels as well. And of course, on top of that, actually, I recently had a fighter message me as well, and he told me a couple of interesting things as well, but I will not name that. Even on the week that he is fighting, I will not name that information. But for Ilian Bouafia, this is a guy that the first thing I did was I watched his first fight, his most recent fight, sorry, and I thought to myself, this is promising. This guy looks good. I actually just lied. I had to message Sean Bitter for this fight because I couldn't find it, but I think it was this fight here. I messaged him. I thought this guy's really, really promising. I messaged that to somebody else. Shout out to Sean Bitter as well. He is the one that gave me the link to this matchup here because I really wanted to watch it because he went 3 rounds. But Bouafia, 6'5", tall kickboxer. I do think he wins this matchup against Santana. Now to talk about him more. He's a kickboxer. He uses that range well. Once again, you see so many times these guys with these gifted heights, these gifted reaches, and they don't really use that effectively. Bouafia is one of those guys that does use it effectively. 6'5", long arms, long legs. He will kickbox from range and he will do it effectively. Once again, kind of just like our friend Susurkaev, he can be low volume at times, but he's low volume with a very, very good accuracy. I don't necessarily see Bouafia throw and whiff a strike. Now, stylistically, Santana's going to bring him into a brawl, but we're going to bring that up in a moment. Bouafia, he wants to fight a pretty low-paced fight. He wants to throw his accurate shots. Once again, somewhat Israel Adesanya-like, I guess, but I would say it doesn't really remind me of him that much. But in general, he looks good. And I really wanted to look at this fight here I mentioned briefly before because it went 3 rounds. It went the distance. And the reason I wanted to watch that was, what does this cardio look like, you know? Because I don't think Santana has good cardio. And he's got good cardio. He looked pretty good against Bagai in the 3rd round. He did look a little bit tired, but to be fair, it was a relatively high-volume fight by Bouafia standards, in my opinion. And he looked pretty good in the 3rd round. He was still kind of dictating the pace, dictating the range. And that's what you like to see. Neemias Santana's the opposite. He is not very technical at all for middleweight. And he will come forward and he will throw down. He is going to bring Bouafia into a war, and Bouafia has never been in a war. Most of his fights, in fact, I would say all of them that I watched, Bouafia controlled the range. Bouafia controlled the pace. Santana is going to come out there and he is going to throw down. This guy kind of reminds me, I guess, like kind of like Ribeiro, Claudio Ribeiro, if you guys remember his run in the UFC, except in my opinion, probably a little bit more technical and less powerful. But this guy will come forward. He will point at the ground and he will go out there and he will just throw down. I did see him get a couple of takedowns, but not really many, and I don't necessarily think he's going to get a takedown against Bouafia unless he somehow rocks him. What Santana's going to do, he's going to come forward and he is going to throw down. He's coming off a couple pretty massive KO wins. I believe this was a ground and pound sort of win over João Paulo Silva, but a straight right, straight down the pipe against a hurt Marcos Vinicius is what was able to get him on the show for the LFA. And I think this is what's going to make it interesting, because I think that if Santana wants to win this fight, he needs to make Bouafia uncomfortable. He needs to fight Bouafia in a sort of way that Bouafia has never fought before. Bouafia wants to be the Adesanya. He wants to be the Alex Pereira. He wants to fight from range. He wants to throw his strikes. He wants to throw not that many strikes per round, but when he does, he's going to land them. And Santana, he's going to have to be... I'm trying to think of like a good example. Alexandre Pantoja. He's going to have to come forward and just bomb away or coming forwards. And I think that Santana could be a guy to look out for a big upset. But just kind of looking at the skill sets, I do believe that Ilian Bouafia is the more talented guy out of these two. I think he's got the better cardio out of these two as well. Santana was looking tired in the second round, in my opinion, against João Paulo Silva. Most notably, it looked a little bit better against Vinicius, but for the most part, Santana's cardio, I think, is a little bit concerning. So I think that Bouafia can go up there, survive round one, but to maybe get in a war. Hopefully not, honestly, for my sake, with the pick. But I do think that Bouafia is going to finish Santana in the second or the third round as Santana does slow down. This is a great card, guys. I'm telling you, there's better cards on the way as well. But for a week one card, this is a banger. This is very, very good. I do believe, sorry that I didn't mention it, but Christopher Ewert's a -160 favorite. Time Miller's -200, Bouafia like -265, and Mangos like -165. There may be a small chance the odds makers make Susurkaev an underdog. I really don't think so. I think we are going all favorites on this card. Not typically the best way to necessarily bet the Contender Series, but they are just the picks and how they fell. Of course, I've been doing this tape study for months now, so I don't know what the odds are until the Saturday before the card. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.